Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Talking Pest Management, or TPM, with Cassie Krejci of Terminix Rentokil. She's Director of Technical Services at the world's largest pest control company, no other than that. And she's very famous for her TikToks, Instagram Reels, and also her LinkedIn activities. Definitely make sure to follow her at the Bug Dog or Cassie Krejci at LinkedIn. And she has a lot to say about the next 10 years in our industry, how it's gonna change, and why she does TikTok and all that, and what kind of value it delivers to such a large international, multinational organization. Great interview, check it out, and let's start with the podcast right now.
Cassie, welcome to Talking Pest Management. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Me too. So, Cassie, you're chief entomologist at Terminix, now Rentokil, and can you give the guide like a small introduction of what you do, how long you've been in pest control, and your career at your current employer?
Absolutely. So I right now I'm the director of technical services for Rentokil Terminix, and have navigated this as our organization started coming together. But essentially, my group is in technical services, not the people that take care of your computer or do the IT side of things, but are the true pest management specialists. They're degreed entomologists. They're board certified. And so I get to, work with a lot of really brilliant people in the pest management world that we can stand up in front of customers and say, look, we have our best person on the ground working on this. This is the white glove customer support that our large customers demand, but also just really invaluable resources for training our teams and, developing standard operating procedures. And so that's what my organization does. I actually joined Terminix in, January of 2022, but I accepted that offer for Terminix the day before, in fact, 7 hours before the acquisition was announced.
Call bad timing.
Or good timing, because honestly, it was the best thing I could have ever done. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I'll tell you that really honestly, but it was... I remember I accepted my offer, and when the markets opened in Europe, it was announced in the middle of the night. And my boss, who was with Terminix at the time, he called me and he said, you can go back to what you were doing. And I said, I am ready for this challenge. And the last 15 months have been nothing short of a challenge, but in the best way possible.
I believe you. I mean, it's such a synergy in my eyes. Not going to talk about it too much today. Obviously, in our podcast, we have different topics, but I find it enriching for the pest domain. I think great things are about to come when such forces join. And it's always a challenge. But we're not afraid of challenges, and especially not you. So, but what brought you into pest control? How come you thought, hey, let's apply or send my CV to that company?
I'll tell you, pest control, especially in the United States, we do a terrible job as an industry of pulling people out of academia. And so I really didn't have a firm understanding of what my role as a degreed entomologist would be in pest control. I always saw it as nothing but a trade, because most of the people I was working with at the university level was just in a training capacity. Like, here's how I can support you from an academic level. Maybe it's research or training. But I did my PhD, my studies in the medical and veterinary realm. My goal was to protect humans and livestock from disease. That was what I wanted to do. But my day job, if you will, was working for an urban entomology lab where I got to see and participate in research related to bed bugs and cockroaches and our traditional urban pests. And so I felt like I got the best collision of both worlds in this space, protecting humans in every realm. And so I went into manufacturing for most of my career up until I joined Terminix. And it was a natural next step to say, let me take my expertise from the manufacturing and the innovation and the training side that I, participated in with manufacturing, and really just, accelerate it in the service side, because as well as I do, manufacturing is thoughtful. It is calculated. Service is like being a fast food line cook. Like you have to make decisions so fast. And so to me, it was like, this is a whole new level of strategic decision making.
Yeah. Much more agile, right? It's and so much more near to the customer. And I think it's very honorable industry that we're in. And for me, it was always, for external people, it was always hard and interesting to explain what we were doing in our industry. But as you said, it's incredibly honorable job for all the thousands of technicians out there and PMPs and professionals delivering service to protect human health. I find it, it's one of the best jobs or industries I could ask for being in. I mean, sometimes industries like fashion or, I don't know, cars are more, flashy or more thought after from young academics. But in the end, especially in fashion, it's just consumable. And you can, of course, be proud of what you're doing because it delivers something soulful to people that gives them joy. But in the end, what we're doing, although it might not be as flashy as selling Gucci t-shirts, it's so much more honorable. And I really can say it's also for this man domain, there's so many, it's just only men in this domain. It's just great to have a powerful woman on a director level in such a meaningful company.
Thank you. Yeah, it is one of those things. As an industry, I think we have a direct impact on the consumer. And so whenever I think about our customers, I literally think about my mom or my best friend and how they would be receiving this information. And that makes it, worthwhile and empathetic for myself. But I know that happens for each one of our technicians as well. They're thinking about the people.
Yes.
And that's so
it's
cool.
Much more social than we think it is.
Yes,
Right?
I agree. Yeah. I think that's probably what drove me to start doing the social media that I do is to say, hey, this impacts your life and maybe remind people of the importance of pest management.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, I find it, we talked about it before we hit record. I really love what you're doing on TikTok, but I'm definitely going to slide in some examples of your TikToks right here for the people to see. And I really hope it goes viral because in the end, as you said, you're touching so many humans out there because everybody has a mosquito, bedbug, or ant or fly once in a while, or wasp nest or whatever it is. And it's such a big market also for B2Cs to educate them and to grab them from their standpoint that pest control always needs to be non-inclusive or exclusive of the customer thoughts and maybe mostly chemical, whereas within your scope, within the IPM program, you're doing much more than that. So I think what you're doing and the education that you're delivering is next to none. So keep it up.
Thank you. Yeah, even if you don't think you have any of those urban pest issues, you definitely consume food, right? And we're protecting the food channel. We're protecting, the streets that you're walking on. You don't necessarily want to see rodents running up and down the streets.
Exactly.
So we're doing what we can to make life more enjoyable, right?
So exactly. So what was the what got you started on TikTok? I mean, were you a consumer on TikTok and did you think, wow, I've seen some pest people performing there and I could do it too? Or what was the intention behind it?
How to inspect your hotel rooms for bed bugs to try to ensure that you don't take any home. So the first thing that I do is I always put my luggage in the bathroom. But then you take your bottom sheet and lift it up as well. So you're not just looking for bed bugs. You also don't want to see any brown spots.
So I was mostly a consumer, and TikTok really became a platform that was consumable during COVID. And whenever I was forced to stay home, I've always traveled quite a bit, but when you're locked down, you think, how am I going to be effective if I'm not in person? And that's how I'm effective. And I found that film became what I wanted to put my efforts into. Even if I couldn't see the person on the other side of the screen, I needed to pivot my approach to be effective on film. And so that's really where it originated, is during COVID. I took to drone. I bought a drone and I started filming things with drones and just saying, this is where I'm going to grow this year, because that's something else I'm passionate about. Where else are you going to grow? In my film skills. And so that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same passion. So you speak right into, it plays right into what I love doing, and it's such a challenging thing to start filming your own. I mean, even your face and speaking to the camera is something totally new to some people, and so it was to you and me probably. But it's so joyful to see these comments and just challenge yourself and do something new and iterate with customers directly. I mean, it's the most clever thing I think you can do from also director point of view to iterate with the ground of customers, be very near to them as a hobby as you do it. I find it extremely clever because you never lose within your decision making, never lose a focus on what you want to actually achieve within the customer. And so that's actually really clever. Yeah,
Thank you. I speak with people about social media a lot, and specifically as a true scientist. I'm not a marketer, never have been. I love the marketers that I work with, but they're the specialists. And I say, when you get into platforms like TikTok, it's really important to recognize what things you're going to stand up for and keep those in focus. So even if you are shooting an ant colony and you're like, hey, I want to share this. Why are you sharing it? What platform are you representing? Maybe it's women in pest management and that's the underlying story you want to tell, or maybe it's safer pest control, whatever it is, just have the messaging outlined in your own world so that whenever you record something, it has a purpose.
Yeah. Speaking of purpose, there's so many innovations also coming up, even in, not only like digital IoT or software or whatever it is, but also when it comes to pure chemistry and biology. So, within the climate change, you have new species of insects you've never found in your region. You've got new challenges in terms of registration and new active ingredients or new methodologies, and it's always been in the last decades. So I think it's extremely important for us also to keep on educating, because sometimes we educate without really knowing that as such a large business that you are, you keep on educating over decades the customer to that scenario, that treatment, whereas in the last 2 or 3 years, maybe there's been a leap of innovation and something completely new that the customer is not aware of yet. Might be the better choice. Speaking about cockroach gel in the past, which was a huge innovation in contrast to fumigation and whatnot. So, yeah. Yeah,
I think we're moving at warp speed. I think you can get hung up on the fact that, maybe the, environmental organizations say we can't use active ingredients. And to me, that is occurring, but we're moving at such a faster speed on the innovation side of things that maybe it won't impact us as much as we thought. There's not, I think old school pest control will begin to fall by the wayside as we bring in these new ideas and fresher ideas and better technology and begin integrating them.
Speaking about technology, you are one of the most innovation thriving, or you just like a magnet. Everything that's innovation, you jump right into it. Speaking about the drone or your TikTok, but also about tech in your company, software or digital products as an alternative to your classic business model. Was that always like your hobby or interest, or is that just your natural curiosity of new things that could be, better for the job that you're doing?
That's such a kind question. I think that it's twofold. One, that's the way my brain works. I love being on the forefront of new things, and innovation is a lot of things, but it's essentially finding a better way to do something that is already being done. And I think there's always a better way. And if you don't find that better way, somebody else will. Yeah. So I also benefit from the fact that I work for a really large organization. Terminix alone was 11,000 employees and 360 branches. And so whenever it comes to adopting new technology, I have to put very little thought into the fact that I have so many markets to test this in. Commercial, residential, different environmental conditions. And every one of these technicians that are willing to support the betterment of our company is happy to jump on and say, yeah, I'll test that new thing. Like they get excited too. And so I think it's twofold. One, I get to drive a lot of the early adoption, but two, I just have these amazing people that are like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's some humans are just programmed to see something and to evaluate, okay, it's been done like that for the past 20 years or something. How could I do it better? The ingenuity behind it. It's just a natural thing that you either have or don't have. But of course, there's a possibility of, train yourself to see things that way as well. So there is no black and white. It's also like grayish. But in the end, it's always fun to speak to like-minded people that are so innovation driven, and you are so curious. So let's speak about innovation in the pest world. for instance, obviously I'm based in Europe and my main focus is on Europe, whereas we are active in many countries around the world. But obviously where you are based at and spend most of the time, you get a little bit biased. And I think in Europe, one of the main topics that's in the forefront right now is the switch in the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, most likely from classic pest control, especially on the rodent side with a lot of toxins, towards a more IPM integrated way of doing pest control. Of course, which is nothing new, but it's the last 20 decades basically it's just been, toxins been at the forefront. And now that states or unions like the European Union are deciding to maybe ban things or even on a country level. Or it might just be a guideline for a food standard that's saying no toxins indoors, something like that. It's positioning our industry towards, a huge challenge, obviously. What am I using? Am I using a trap? What kind of trap? Am I using exclusion methods, a digital trap, Internet of Things, sensors, cameras, and whatnot, and software? How do I integrate it? So this is a current, at least in my bubble, discussion that we have here in Europe. What are we going to do when rodenticides are going to be taken off us? Is that something of a similar topic in the US, or what is your main topic in the US?
So absolutely, it's a topic. I don't know that most of our constituents in the United States recognize what we can do about it, though. I feel a little bit biased because I do have connections like yourself or my European colleagues with Rentokil Initial to bounce ideas off and plan. But, one thing that I think is really important about that conversation is the value of a partnership. And when you have, like, for example, in the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency put forth 11 proposed interim decisions on 11 active ingredients for rodenticides saying, look, these are the steps we're going to take to regulate that. And we just recently responded to those proposals. But the response was a balance, if you will, to say, look, we're working on it. We recognize the risk. We recognize what needs to be done, but let's create a partnership now to say these are the goals we're going to meet and this is the timeline. But if you don't have those partnerships in place, it can turn into regulation that doesn't take our business into account. And so I think it's almost, an example, if you will, rodenticides is of how those partnerships can play in the favor for not just our business, but the environment, our consumers, all of the things we all passionately care about.
Because in the end, it's about efficiency, right? And it's we're talking about Europe, which is tiny against the North American market. So, it's in the end doing having such a decision made without that partnership is just probably impossible to make on that large scale that we were talking about North American wide. And I'm not even talking about the whole Rentokil Initial or Rentokil, worldwide span. It's very hard to just overnight digitize all your products and get rid of rodenticides. Obviously, from a C level. So I'm really excited about Paul's interview with your chief executive officer, Yal, ex-CEO of Anticimex, so one of the competitors in the large space of pest control services, has said that digital products are the next best thing to slice bread. But of course, and they have just as your company, a few 100,000, probably 500,000 and upwards digital sensors on the ground. But when you think about all the billions, probably most likely, or at least millions of or traps, non-analog traps that you have on the ground, it's nothing. So it's a little bit of fun and playfulness, and it's great for marketing because it really actively increases efficiency or control, and in the end reduces rodenticides. But it's so hard to just have somebody force that decision upon you without your an interface with a new, let's say, regulation, and just force you next year you're gonna have to do anything differently. I also think that's quite a challenge. And how do you think that's going to play out in the next 10 years?
Well, one of the things that you said in your interview with Paul was talking about flipping the IPM pyramid upside down, retaining our resources, because we do need to use our tools. But maybe we need to train or have a more robust form of non-toxic tools. And I think that's where the balance happens, is that we begin to utilize more of that pyramid than just the rodenticide side of things. I think that remote technology, specifically for rodents, is most exciting for me, because not just for the customer aspect, because they're begging for it, they are ready for it, and that's exciting. But on the technician level, that's where I'm most excited, is that I think about the service flow of monitoring or checking stations, and the ability to make a technician more efficient and make his day or her day easier is probably the most exciting part. And the data sides of things is really thrilling as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You can't really flip the switch on digital from today to tomorrow. It's such a big and enduring challenge that you're taking on. And in the end, it's, as you said, you got to be inclusive to the technician. It's obvious that the customers really like it. And maybe it's going to be paid for it, and that's not the biggest challenge, the economics around it. But in the end, we're talking about software, we're talking about dependency. For you as a huge organization with, let's say, all your rodent traps, millions of rodent traps sending signals every day, to whom are you paying tribute? I mean, is it AWS for servers? Is it a trap manufacturer that you're partnering with? And how are you going to integrate all of that in your service offering? Are you reducing visits? What other analog, as you said, control methods are you going to be using, or prevention methods? I mean, there's always going to be that one customer where we're going to need toxins, and there's always going to be that one customer that has toxins since 20 years and never had an issue with rodents. So there's, both examples on the end of the line. But the real question is, for a large company like yours, I mean, there's several thousands of family-owned businesses with 20 to 500 people and staff that have flipped the switch and brought in 10, 20, 50,000 of digital units, which is amazing for them. And they have incredible aspiring business models, but they're a small organization in contrast to what you're doing. So this is really interesting. Of how do you believe, as when you're so also innovation focused, or you really like the topic, how do you think that's going to be, how are you going to play that ball in the next 5 to 10 years? Is it going to be as it has been played in the last 5 to 10 years, so slightly, or is there going to be like a hockey stick movement?
I think it is going to be exponential when compared to the last 5 to 10 years. I don't think that we can safely do a hockey stick movement, because we do have quite a bit. Whenever you ever seen a cruise ship turn around in a canal?
Exactly. I love that example. Yeah. Versus
that's kind of what it is. Exactly. That's kind of what it is, we have to, in order to maintain or to accomplish those efficiencies that we want to by going to remote, we need to do it strategically. And so in comparison, it will look like a hockey stick swipe, but I think it'll be exponential in comparison, and I'm excited for it. I think that as much as people like yourself sell the technology and say this is how it can benefit your organization, it takes just as much internal selling for it to be adopted by technicians. And I think that specifically our teams, or even if you are talking about those 20 to 500 employee companies, you need leaders to stand up and say, this is a good thing. And you get that internal buy-in.
Yeah. I'm totally with you on that. And as much as we can, as the products itself or the products themselves can be sold or marketed as good products for an organization in your size, it really needs to be thought through a little bit more. And I think there's also with technology, and this is tech, straight and pure tech, as pure as it can be, with IoT plus software, that's really techy. A lot of things changed in the last 5 years. So some companies, the iteration of bringing out a new product that's 2023-ish is not overnight. So there's I think a lot of exciting things going to come out and are going to surprise ourselves within the next few years for sure. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I think even just going back to relationships, organizations like mine, or, really any, understanding the relationship between themselves, the customer, and the data is something that needs to be innovated as well. Who owns it? At what rate do we need to discuss data with customers? Are we discussing data with residential customers? It's going to look different than commercial. And so developing that model, I think, is really important to the adoption process as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, it's definitely going to be challenging because the data of the customers, I mean, you at the end, you're going to become way more transparent if you want to. You could, of course, do differently, but there are some companies like the small mid-size enterprises that are definitely going to play the ball of transparency, also sometimes against you, because it's very hard to be 100% transparent when it comes to planning, because at the end you're a business and you need to deliver all that security to your customers, and when in the end your customers dictates you when you have to arrive at the site, it's gonna not make sense to the business model. And in the end, the business model is way more important to humankind than just giving away all that information at first grasp, just because you can, or some other companies challenge you to do it. So it's very challenging indeed.
Yeah, and I think depending on the market, they either are going to want to know everything about that data, or they'll want to say that's what we pay you to do. We don't want anything to know anything about it. And so I think it'll be different based on markets too.
So from the meta point of view to more micro perspective, what do you think about what are attributes that, let's say, a digital product like a digital bug trap, bed bug trap, rodent trap, sensor, camera, whatever it is, needs to fulfill? Is it like, for instance, the amount of false alerts, false positives, scale onto your dimensions could be outrageous as one example, or security of data, server structure, APIs. What kind of topics drive you, or one of the things that I've mentioned within decision making, or where do you lay your focus on?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think it depends. It definitely changes based on the target. If we are discussing cockroach traps, for example, digital cockroach traps, in a commercial environment, I think it's important to know that the insects are being contained. We don't want, in that instance, roaches, which are, mechanical pathogens or mechanical vectors of pathogens, to be able to continue moving along their merry way. We want to contain as much as possible in that instance. And so, there's not a whole lot of risk there related to false identification. If you have anything moving through that trap, I want to know about it. If for bed bugs, I think it's important to understand early detection being the most important. So if a bed bug monitor is remote, I want to know how early it is able to detect a specimen, because that can help us prevent spread. It can prevent further difficulties of the problem. So for rodents, it's more about I need to know how accurate it is. Maybe that involves a camera. Maybe it involves understanding when it was a dry fire, not firing, on a trap, but did it miss? Exactly. Understanding that's really important. So I think it changes based on the target is the easy answer, because each one of those pests that are going to be remote monitored have different implications.
And what do you think about like radio frequencies or standards? I mean, there are products that send over Wi-Fi, some even, but that's like very minor, is Bluetooth. Some use SIM cards, and the newer substandards on the mobile network operator level. And is there any preference, or is that too techy and never been on your mind yet?
I'm really familiar, obviously, with Pest Connect, and Our system operates on a wireless 4G connection using that. And what I think the benefit of that is that it doesn't rely on a customer's wireless system. It doesn't disrupt their day-to-day, which is our goal. Be in, be out, get the job done. Don't interrupt their own service flow. And so for us, that has been the most successful. And I think there's all kinds of systems that serve different purposes. But for Pest Connect and our customer base, that has been the best choice.
And I think that's brilliant, to be honest. It's my personal preference as well, because in the end, with Wi-Fi, you have a huge dependency on the customer, but also security-wise, it can be penetrated way easier. So I don't think for a company like yourself that would be a model that you would probably choose. And in the end, it's like with Bitcoin, you have fiat currency, which is the dollar or the euro or whatever it is, and then you have Bitcoin as a decentral, what's the word? Currency, that's it. Sorry. And it's the same with IoT or Internet of Things, because in the end you have LoRaWAN, which stands for Long Range Wide Area Network Application, or even Sigfox or some others like minor companies. There are privately owned companies that have received fundings of venture capitalists or private equities, like hundreds of millions, and have put in place or Helium is another one to Google, because they also have a digital currency, like a cryptocurrency attached to it. It's quite interesting radio, Internet of Things innovation. But in the end, you're having a decentralized world of these before mentioned Sigfox, LoRaWAN companies that are a company of their own, and try to build a competition network to, let's say, the iPhones, Verizon or whatever it is network. And then you have the centralized ones, which are, as you said, a 4G with Verizon and T-Mobile and Vodafone and all these large players that have, where billions of fund money of state money went into funding all of that infrastructure. And it's always been a fight within these, whereas innovation has always been more interesting or, active on the decentral side. But now I think we're in a perfect phase also for large organizations like yourself to use the MNO, a mobile network operator infrastructure of 4G and 5G and substandards with the security that has, versus the non-security that you have on the decentralized way. And I think it's very much like with Bitcoin and fiat currency, and it's interesting to see how it plays out, because there are companies out there that offer both, and I'm fascinated by all of them. But it's obvious that you and your organization are focusing on the solid and secure and scalable part of that.
Absolutely. I think that as much as people want access to the information, people being our customers also want to be sure that people can't access it without their knowledge. And that is equally important. So I think that, again, it's probably, a lot more about the systems out there than I do from your perspective. But I will say I know very generically what is available, and Pest Connect seem to be the best global option using that 4G system for all of our markets. I think so too.
Totally agree. And I think it was a clever decision to owning that. How do you think price? I mean, you're with Pest Connect, you're building your own devices, which are extremely innovative. And I think everybody should, who not checked it out yet, you should definitely Google Pest Connect on also YouTube. It's really interesting videos that explain it. And you've sold hundreds of thousands of them. I would guess like over 500,000, which is crazy, which is positive. And I think in the next couple of years, they're going to be millions sold. But how do you think, is price going to play a role in that? I mean, are there going to be units, let's say, there are units in the market also from competitors of yours that cost hundreds of euros, let's say 500, but do a great job, or even multi-catch or whatever they do, great features, versus a unit that maybe your radar unit or something like that could be on scale, probably produce quite low cost. I would just assume, I don't know, 50, 40 euros something, and maybe in future even 30 or 20 euros. So how do you think the relationship of price plays into of how good a product is, or how it's going to be used and rolled out on scale?
Yeah, I always tell people I don't know how much things cost, but I know the value of a lot of things.
Yes.
And for me, specifically on this remote monitoring journey that we're on, continuing to translate the value is going to be the most important part of the conversation. Meaning, I think have held devices that have been shown to me, and they were like, well, this is how many euros or dollars it costs. And I'm like, well, the cell phone in my hand costs less than that, and it's like, well, that's not feasible for an organization my size, especially not with as many employees as we have. And so I think there definitely is a sweet spot in the cost. If we can continue to communicate value, we don't need to reach the bottom of the bucket. We don't want to, because that doesn't allow us the room to continue to innovate the technology if we get to the bottom of the bucket.
I couldn't agree more. And in the end, you don't want to compromise. You don't want to compromise and then be left with a unit that's malfunctioning.
Exactly. And so I think for an organization like ours, selling the value and providing a complete form of service and control allows us to really ride the middle of the road on cost to our customers. From the device perspective, I think we'll always remain competitive, but from a device that we use and manufacture, it doesn't need to be the cheapest, but it will never be the most expensive either.
Yeah, I'll probably 100% agree on that. Yeah.
Good.
Another one would be to finish our conversation on innovation. There would be how much of a role does ESG play within that whole innovation scheme, or even within your business as a whole?
Role of what now?
ESG, so the environmental, social, governance kind of thing. So the green kind of movement, less CO2 emittance, less toxins or whatnot.
Okay, thank you. Green is, I told you, I think in one of my first messages to you that green is not my favorite word. And it's because we haven't defined it in the pest management industry, and that it's begging for conversations like this to define it. So environmental sustainability and reducing our carbon footprint is a leading indicator of success at Rentokil. And so when it comes to innovation, I would say that every single one of our innovation priorities has an ESG component involved in it. So it's very important. Efficiency is important. Cost is important, but our ability to reduce the any negative implications is equally as important to any of that.
Yeah. I find it also sometimes, the whole green movement per se gets a lot of applause all the time, whereas sometimes you're compromising on when you're actually evaluating what this business does as a whole worldwide. The ESG thing sometimes stands in the way, I think, or is just going to be used as a marketing tool. So I'm totally with you on that. But we had the conversation earlier on. Green's not always good, and it needs to be defined how green is. Green per se, it gets a lot of applause, but in the end, it might not be better when we look at alternatives to plastic and the recycling aspects of them or whatnot. So it's a whole different story. But I'm very interested to see how that's going to play out in our industry in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm excited as well.
Yeah. So closing, like the last few questions that I have is, yesterday was International Women's Day. And women in pest control, unfortunately, there are too little, I want to say. It's still a masculine dominated industry. Obviously, bugs are, but in the end, well, how do you think that's going to be changing, hopefully, in the next decades? And why is that? Is it because bugs and spiders and mice are just
I do think it's going to explode with more diversity, both from the gender aspect to nationality, all of it. Pest management is becoming one of those industries that is becoming more prominent in people's brains, just due to the work we're doing on podcasts or social media.
Exactly.
So I think historically, much like academics in pest control, women in pest control was just not a platform anybody was standing on. And this year alone, if I compare it to last year's International Women's Day, just seeing the social impact that people were putting out, it was much more than last year. I was like, okay, we took a step forward. And so I think that us meaning you and I of, different genders, saying you're welcome here is really important. And showing people that whatever successes they want to have in pest management are possible. If you want to be the mom that goes to soccer practice at 3 p.m., let's get you a route that ends before that, because that's 100% possible. Or if you want to be a customer service rep that gets to solve people's problem because you're a deeply empathetic person, there's a role for you in pest control. So just showing that, just showing women that you have really important talents, and I'd love for you to consider pest control as a place to apply them, is one of the platforms I like to stand on specifically.
Yeah, I think and hope too that it's going to grow, and we put our money where our mouth is too, and we try to support it. And one of our directors, or our our VP, as you probably would say in English, is a girl, and it's not a woman, it's a girl. She's 24, and she's got a master's degree and over 3 years of experience in our industry, and it's incredible what that woman does in our company.
Amazing.
It's amazing, and I really want to. Obviously, you pull out all the women in our industry and also the men, and also all genders and nationalities, as you said. But it's such an amazing industry to be in. So I hope your TikToks and our podcast are going to be heard by so many people, and hopefully more crazy good people are going to join our industry.
I agree.
Super.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for having the conversation.
Always. Thank you so much. Great to have you. And it would be amazing to see you in Europe someday, which we discussed earlier on.
Yes.
So maybe we could do that in person then at some level.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Cassie, and I'll bet you never forget that name. She's an amazing, powerful woman, and we're definitely hearing a lot more of her in the future. An innovative mind, and I really enjoy talking to her, and we're definitely going to have her back in the near future. If you like what you saw, and you like our pest control niche content, obviously, please subscribe, please follow, and make sure to send us some comments and let us know your feedback. Maybe you have somebody that we should talk to or interview from wherever around the world for whatever topic. Just send us an email or comment down below, and we'll make sure to deliver the best content we can to you. So thanks for watching again. Have a great day. See you on the next one. Bye.